If you're applying right before applications close, you still may not be guaranteed admission. Like I said, this past year, there's so many schools that were over enrolled that people with stats like that didn't even get in. What is up, fam? It is Shar, and welcome to Law and Living Color, where I provide quick tips and experiences on the law school process and legal field as a person of color. So throughout my journey, I would hear people talk about SOFTS, and I had no clue what they were talking about. Thank God there's Google. So what SOFTS are any component of the law school application aside from the LSAT and the GPA. That goes from work experience, what organizations you were involved in, any honors or awards that you've received, your personal statement, your diversity statement, your addendum, like literally everything that is not your score or your GPA. So with SOFTS, there are different tiers. You have T1 through T4, and basically it's the ones that what is considered a T1 and T2, T4 soft. And I'm getting these definitions from a site called LS Data. Tier 1 would be the extremely rare case. So you'd have like a CEO of a multi-million-dollar company. You'd have an extremely highly decorated veteran. You'd have a professional athlete that is pro now. You would have someone that is a published author, that has published many works. And from, like, when I say highly decorated, you got Medal of Honor, those types of decorations in military service. So tier 2 is also not as prevalent, and you have decorated military service. Possibly you are a chairman. You didn't necessarily start a company, but you have a lot of high status in a company. You are an NCAA athlete or a D1 athlete who stood out. You have prior demonstration of high expertise in certain fields, but you didn't necessarily find that company, but you hold a high status in that company. So as I say, the last two of these tiers, I want you guys to remember that each of these criteria does not mean that you are tier 2 overall. If you just have one of those things, that accomplishment, is considered that tier. So if I have a highly decorated veteran with all these honors, that would be a tier 1 soft. However, if I have only overcome, like say I have overcome poverty as a child, that would be considered a T3 soft. So each circumstance has its own tier. So moving on to T3 softs. T3 soft would be a commissioned military service. It would be doing Peace Corps. That would be a T3 soft. Being an NCAA athlete in general would be a T3 soft, opposed to a highly decorated NCAA athlete, which would be considered a T2 soft. And then lastly, for T3 soft, a T3 soft in employment would just be any experience whatsoever in the legal field. So a paralegal, a legal assistant, anything like that. Finally, you have T4 softs, which are the most common types of softs. So any type of military service at all would be considered a T4 soft. Any legal internships, congressional internships, any participation in student organizations, those would all be T4 soft. Being part of an honor society, that is also a T4 soft. Higher scholarships like a Rhodes Scholar or a Gates Scholar, that would be a T1 to T2. T3 would still be higher scholarships attained or a great amount of scholarships attained in undergrad, and T4 would just be being affiliated with an honor society. I would say that graduating with honors, so summa cum laude, that type of thing, I would say is probably a T3. It may be a T4, but I would say it's more of a tier 3 soft. Those are all the types of softs. I know that was a mouthful. It was a lot to remember on my end as well. But hopefully that provides more insight, I guess, into what law schools look at. So when we talk about tiers, we're just talking about more favorable softs. So when you talk about tier 1, that's a more favorable tier than a tier 4 soft, if that makes sense, according to law schools and according to this site. Again, this is not things that I came up with off the top of my head. I wanted to say what some of my softs were to give you guys some insight. I have also been part of organizations in undergrad, either as an officer or just as a member. I did a lot of community outreach, so I volunteered, all of which are things that are considered T4. I did overcome some financial hardship in my life. which I wrote about in my personal statement, that would be considered a T3 soft. I have also attained many scholarships throughout undergrad to pay for undergrad, which would also be considered a T3 soft. I've also been part of Honor Society and undergrad, and I also graduated summa cum laude from undergrad, which would be considered, I would think, a T3, and being part of those honor societies would be a T4. I have a lot of work experience. I'm not a CEO of anything, so yeah, no, but I do have a lot of legal work experience, as well as I've also held pretty significant roles in other, I guess, job opportunities or job fields. So that would put me in the T3 zone. So for my softs, I would say I was in between T3 and T4 for my softs. I talk about what softs are, I talk about the tiers of the soft, and I talk about what my softs were. Now it's time to ask whether softs are really important. And I do think that they are. So in prior videos, I talk about how your story matters and how these factors do weigh well for your application. As far as being a tier 2 versus a tier 4 and whether that hurts you, I don't think it does. So if I have a ton of T4 softs opposed to T3 or T2, that does not hurt my application. I don't think. I think those softs, having those softs in general, are beneficial towards my application, regardless of what tier they are. I will say that certain other softs, such as things that had to go against your character and fitness, is a different story. So if you cheated in undergrad and had to go in front of the judiciary board and you were found guilty, that could potentially go against your application. However, you can write an explanation as to what happened and what you learned. And I talk a lot about that in my prior video about addendums. In regards to how softs impact your application, it has to do with your target school's medians. So each school has what we call above the median, and below the median. That's just me keeping it simple. So let's give an example. So let's say this school, this X school, their medians are a 160 LSAT and a 3.4 GPA. That's their median. So a good amount of people with those scores get in, right? So if you are in that median, if you have like a 161 and a 3.4, you're looking pretty good. Now, I won't say that you will automatically get into school. Again, when you apply also is a significant factor on your admissions to law school. But I will say, in regards to softs, that they can still help your position. And I say that because someone else may have very similar scores, and with the whole entire over enrollment thing that's happened this past year, and I'm sure it may happen next year, those soft factors do have an impact on whether one school picks someone over another. Now, when you're above the median, so in this example we said what, 160 and a 3.4. So if you like were a 168 and a 3.6, then softs matter to an extent. I don't think they matter all too much because your score is well above the median for your target school, along with your GPA. You're looking good. Now, if you're below the median, that's where I say softs actually really do matter. So when you're below the median of a school, even if it's just a little bit below, like say you scored a 158 opposed to a 160 and you have like a 3.2 GPA, that's when your softs matter. Like schools still accept people below the median. That's why they have that there. They still accept people below the median, but it's like you have to, I guess, prove to them why it should be you opposed to somebody else. And that's where softs become a bigger play. So that is all, fam. If you like this video, please remember to like, comment, and subscribe. I am always here, and if you leave a comment, I will almost always respond. So if you have any questions, please hit me up in the description below, or you can hit me up on my socials. To end things off with a quote by one of my favorite authors, Maya Angelou: all great achievements require time. Peace, guys.